The law office stood on the edge of a small mountain town, 2 blocks from the bakery my grandmother visited every morning. I arrived early. The waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Through the window, the mountains stood quiet and distant. Gray, like the sky before snowfall. My grandmother had lived here for nearly 40 years. 15 of those years she spent running the mountain lodge. It stood a few minutes up the road, hidden along a pine-covered slope. The place was never luxurious, but it carried a reputation. Hikers came there. Riders passing through the mountains stopped there. And people escaping the noise of cities somehow always found their way to its doors. When I was 19, it became the only place left for me. That was the year my parents decided I was no longer welcome in their home. It didn't happen in one loud argument. It happened slowly. Conversations turned into disagreements. Disagreements turned into quiet judgments. They didn't approve of my choices, my work, or the people I spent time with. Eventually, the conversations stopped sounding like discussions and started sounding like verdicts. One evening, my father said something simple and final. If I planned to live that way, I wouldn't be living under their roof. Within hours, I was packing my things. 3 hours later, my grandmother picked me up at the bus station. She didn't ask questions. She didn't demand explanations. She simply made tea and showed me the small room in the cabin beside the lodge. I lived there for almost a year. It was a quiet year. A year where nobody told me I was doing life the wrong way. Some evenings we sat on the porch watching the fog roll slowly down the mountains. My grandmother rarely spoke about the past. But sometimes she stared down the winding road leading to the valley, as if expecting someone to appear. Back then I didn't understand why. After that year, I moved to the city. Little by little I built a life of my own. Still, whenever I had the chance, I came back to visit the lodge. My parents never once visited that place. Not a single time. Which is why it felt strange when the office door opened and they walked in that morning. They looked older. My father's hair had turned mostly gray. My mother seemed thinner and carried herself more carefully than before. But the most noticeable change was their confidence. They behaved as if the meeting already belonged to them. My father noticed me first. "Well," he said with a small smile, "look who's here." My mother nodded politely. "We assumed you would come." I didn't respond. I simply watched them take seats across the waiting room. A few minutes later, the lawyer invited us inside. The office itself was small. A desk, 3 chairs, and a long window looking out over the mountains. My parents sat down like people who had attended many meetings like this before. My father leaned back in his chair, arms folded. "That lodge of hers," he said casually, "really is an interesting property." The lawyer opened a folder but hadn't begun reading yet. My mother glanced toward me. "This could actually turn into something special," she said. "Your father and I were discussing it on the way here." My father nodded. "Tourism around here is growing every year. With the right renovations, that lodge could become a real family business." He said the word family as if there had never been missing years between us. Listening to them gave me a strange feeling. Not anger. More like watching a conversation that had skipped over several important chapters. Finally, the lawyer began reading the will. Most of it surprised me. My grandmother had left donations to the local library, to the volunteer fire department, even to the bakery owner who used to deliver bread during heavy snowstorms. She had also left small amounts to 2 women who helped maintain the lodge over the years. Each line revealed another quiet piece of the life she built in that town. Then the lawyer turned the page. "The primary asset," he said. "The mountain lodge and surrounding land." My parents leaned slightly forward. The property will be transferred entirely to my grandchild. For a moment no one spoke. Then my father slowly nodded. Well, he said, adjusting quickly, that makes sense. My mother smiled. Of course. And from there we can all work together. But the lawyer kept reading. There is, however, one final clause attached to this inheritance. The room suddenly felt smaller. My father's smile remained, but something in it tightened. The lawyer read the words slowly. The lodge may not be transferred, sold, or shared with any person who has previously severed family ties with the inheritor. For a moment the words didn't fully register. Then my mother inhaled sharply. What does that mean? She asked. The lawyer looked up calmly. It means the property must remain entirely under the control of the inheritor if relatives previously rejected or expelled them from the family. Silence filled the room. The first expression to change was my father's. His confidence faded. Something more complicated replaced it. That's very specific, he said quietly. Yes, the lawyer replied. Your mother worded it very clearly. My mother stared down at the table. She began to say something but stopped halfway. No business partnerships, the lawyer confirmed. No shared ownership agreements. No transfer of property. The finality of those words settled across the room like falling snow. No argument followed. No negotiation. Just a boundary placed years earlier by someone who had clearly seen everything. My father slowly leaned back in his chair. She really planned far ahead, he murmured. I didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. My grandmother had never spoken badly about my parents. Not once. But she had always been paying attention. The meeting ended soon after. Outside the office, the mountain air felt sharper than before. My parents stood beside their car, unsure what to say. My father looked toward the mountains. Somewhere beyond the trees, the lodge waited quietly. Well, he finally said, I suppose you have a lot to think about now. I nodded. Then I walked toward my car. Not quickly, just steadily. The road leading to the lodge curved through the forest. The same road my grandmother had driven years earlier when she came to pick me up. For the first time that day, the inheritance didn't feel like money. And it didn't feel like property. It felt like something else entirely. Like a quiet promise my grandmother had made long before this meeting ever happened.